A new report due out next week will show what income families in Colorado need to make ends meet financially. And the numbers, according to that study, are a far cry from the poverty guidelines set by the government. A 2013 iNews special report called The Cliff Effect shed light on how that very gap makes it even more difficult for Coloradans to overcome poverty. We profiled 3 families at that time, each of them facing the same catch-22. Even a small increase in their income could disqualify them from work supports, government assistance, meaning a net financial loss for their family. This new report from the Colorado Center for Law and Policy, called the Self-Sufficiency Standard in Colorado 2015, is designed to help key stakeholders, including state legislators, make decisions that can help such families achieve financial security. Joining me now from the center to discuss their findings are the Executive Director, Claire Levy, and Aubrey Hasvold, who helped to produce this report. Claire, let's start with the fact that this study is very comprehensive. It breaks it down by each county, which will be, of course, helpful in those counties. And using Denver County as an example, we look at a family that is 4 people, 2 adults and 2 children. You find $63,000 a year is what this family would need to make, but it's so different from some of the other guidelines. The federal poverty guideline for that family is $24,000. Huge gap.
Huge gap, right. And so what this study tells us is that what the federal government looks at for whether you're in poverty or not in poverty, and what the federal government looks at for whether you qualify for various programs or not, really doesn't relate to what it actually takes to make ends meet, to be able to live without public or private assistance. And that's one of the main takeaways from the report.
There seems to be an acknowledgement of the government's numbers being low, in that for some services to qualify, you have to be 100 and some % of the poverty level. So it's already saying, well, I guess the poverty level doesn't really count here, right?
Yeah, I think there's pretty widespread recognition that the official federal poverty guideline or federal poverty level is not a measure of whether you're in poverty or not in poverty. It's a very arbitrary number. And so, as you point out, most programs are based on a multiple of FPL, or they're based on something completely different, such as a percentage of area median income.
Aubrey, when we look at this self-sufficiency standard, what is that exactly? Is that just food and housing and healthcare?
It accounts for just the essentials, so food, housing, healthcare, transportation, childcare, and these are all really modest estimates too. For example, for transportation, it only accounts for to work and back and 1 grocery run per week. And for food, it only accounts for cooking at home, just bare bones, basics, doesn't account for even ordering a pizza once in a while. So.
Supports is the catch-all phrase for things that are a sort of social services safety net. Food stamps is considered a work support. Child care assistance payments, housing assistance. So the only thing that is really keeping a family that is actually trying to live on minimum wage, or even quite a bit above minimum wage, that's keeping them in a home or keeping food on the table, keeping the heat and the lights on, are government program assistance. So it's real important to have those in place, and that's one of the takeaways from the report, is how important it is to have those benefits set at the right level so people don't find themselves homeless or hungry.
Aubrey, this goes beyond what some people consider the working poor. It's actually quite a wide swath of occupations. For instance, the top 10 most common occupations in Colorado, only 3 of those would pay you enough to have a self-sufficiency standard.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. About 1/5 of Colorado's working people are in one of these top 10 jobs, and then 7 of them, we're talking retail, food service, janitorial services, secretarial services. These all don't pay self-sufficiency wages on average. And these are really important occupations for our communities, and so it really is a detriment to our society and our state that they don't receive these wages that they need to receive.
I see that Diana Pierce, is it, who wrote the report? She, I guess, is recognized for that term, the feminization of poverty, which is really that a lot more women are in this situation than men. Is that right?
Well, yeah, Diana Pierce developed that concept, and she developed the standard itself, which is really widely recognized as an important tool for creating programs and setting the right benefit level for those programs. But when your readers or your listeners have a chance to look at the publication when we release it, the family profiles that are in the report are a single parent with 1 or 2 children of different ages, and also 2-parent families. But we see so many single mothers with children trying to both work and take care of childcare and transportation and housing all on one salary, that I think that's where that feminization of poverty concept comes from.
Aubrey, the report also, of course, as we've noted, takes a look at the disparities across Colorado. For instance, Summit County, the cost of living is much higher there than it would be, say, somewhere on the Eastern Plains. Talk about the variation in what you found.
Absolutely. So over the last handful of years, since 2001 to 2015, there has been a 32% increase in the CPI. But this doesn't account for the changes among different counties. So for example, in Boulder, the increase in the CPI, or the Self-Sufficiency Standard in this case, is 70%. So we've got some pretty big differences, and it ranges from in Bent County in the Eastern Plains at 162% of the federal poverty line, to Pitkin County, which is the highest at 400% of the poverty line. So really huge differences.
So, and it seems as though the other measures don't really take into account those geographic differences and the differences in what things cost in those places. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And that's the beauty of the standard, is that, you know, the federal poverty level is set for the whole country. And
with no regard to what anything costs or where you live.
Right, and it's basically a multiple of the cost of food. And it was created back in the day when food consumed 1/3 of your budget, of a household budget. Well, now food is about 13% of a household budget. So, yeah.
Let me ask you last question, where this report is headed. You want it to inform social services providers and policymakers, I assume. How will this help?
Well, job counselors, for instance. If somebody is thinking about a career, maybe they just have a high school education or a GED, it's important to know in your community where you live, say you're in Larimer County, you're in Pitkin County, what kind of job do you really need to be aiming for in order to be able to be self-sufficient? Or it can tell us, well, how good are our job training programs? Are they training people for the kinds of jobs where they'll be able to be independent, or are they training them for jobs where they're going to have to rely on public assistance? So there are a lot of different uses for this report.
Thank you very much, Claire Levy and Aubrey Hasvold of the Center for Law and Policy, and that report will be released next Thursday, June 11th. It will be on the Center's website, cclponline.org, and we will have more reporting on the topic at rmpbs.org/news as well.